Most of the time, healing and transformation in our lives is a long, slow process, very Plutonian, very Saturnian. And other times, it is actually possible to have the experience of sudden spiritual grace arrive in our lives. To be spiritually, kind of sometimes miraculously, even liberated from a pattern, a person, a lifestyle, an addiction, or maybe even a set of circumstances where we've just felt karmically stuck, maybe for years or decades or even lifetimes. And this final Pisces lunar eclipse occurring on August 27th, 2026 at 4 degrees and 54 minutes of Pisces is one such moment. I'm going to talk about what it might look like in each of our lives and provide you a meditation, mirror work, and a mantra for what's probably going to be very unpredictable, even more unpredictable than a standard eclipse, where the wheel of fortune and fate turns and shows us, that ultimately we are at the mercy of forces that we cannot control. We can only respect, honor, and be in awe and wonder of them. Hi, I'm Amy Rose White. I'm an integrative psychotherapist and counseling astrologer with a 30-year career in the mental health field, and I make videos on concrete self-healing tools. See all my healing resources that are free linked below, as well as my booking calendar for the few spots I have left next month. Now, sudden healing sounds amazing, and it is for any of us that have experienced, kind of a sudden release, because Pisces is very interested in doing that. It has the ability to merge both empathically in the feeling states of others and with divine guidance on the other side. But it can also highlight our blind spots and it can amplify them. And it's interesting, there's a real tension with this partial lunar eclipse because full moons are culminations. They tend to close doors basically where karmic fruits or the manifestation of seeds that are sown a long time ago in the Pisces Virgo areas of our charts are coming to fruition now in culmination. The lunar focus of this eclipse will be more of a change of circumstances and in the environments around us and in our bodies and minds, which is definitely amplified by the fact that there's a Mercury Cazimi, meaning Mercury's conjunct the sun on the day of the eclipse, that we'll get to in a little bit. So the Virgo Pisces 18-month eclipse journey that we've all been on, where for each of us, we've been more and more able to see with clarity, and sometimes it might have been through losses that occur in the boundarylessness space that sometimes exists with Pisces. And because the sun at the time of the eclipse is in Virgo and ruled by that Mercury, Cazimi, there's a definite flavor change. And the Cazimi, to ancient astrologers, infused Mercury, the mind, the messenger, the giver of information, our capacity for critical thought, and where our beliefs can be guided by multiple different sources, including messages from the other side. It gets this reboot from the sun in its home temple of Leo. So it's a very especially strong Cazimi moment. Like our minds will not be the same. The thoughts in our mind are going to change in the weeks unfolding after this eclipse. And in Virgo, where the South Node has been, and what will be opposed during this full moon moment, anything else left over in the Virgo areas of our chart where we've been overly critical or punitive towards ourselves or others, or perhaps we've been overly focused on mundane and making sure that's right over the spiritual, Pisces. Sudden epiphanies and awakenings are likely to reveal all the change that this eclipse cycle has been slowly kind of churning up and brought up in both the Pisces and Virgo areas of our charts, but in a very sudden and surprising way because the eclipse squares Uranus in Gemini at 5 degrees and 37 minutes. Uranus, of course, is heavily invested in awakening our consciousness through sudden people, places, and things coming in, coming out, unfolding at a moment's notice, where we are forced to pivot. And we suddenly see these things in a maybe completely different way because of circumstances totally beyond our control that we probably had no way of imagining. And under a Uranus square during an eclipse, we might have people questioning if we're okay because the insights and decisions that come on our part or others at eclipse time in general literally flip the game board upside down. It doesn't just change it. So look to where Uranus is sitting and where it's been working with that minor grand trine with Neptune and Pluto, because remember that Pluto trine to Uranus is powerful intrapsychic downloads from the other side. In fact, often eclipses, that tend to bring beginnings and endings, and then often sudden with eclipses, but especially with Uranus, It really is true. I know we say it a lot in the astrology world. All of that we feel is in the hands of the divine, but perhaps we can also feel our ancestors here, Pisces, and our angels and guides and the rest of our spirit team turning the map of our lives, speaking to us, guiding us towards our highest natal potential, and really like kind of kicking our butts towards our soul growth trajectory that we're supposed to be experiencing in this life. Someone in my comment section recently described a quote, "When the student is ready, the master disappears," which I've referenced in other videos, but I keep coming back to it because it hits really home for me. So much has happened to me, both challenging and blessing, since a teacher of mine suddenly disappeared under an eclipse that involved Uranus, that affected my 7th house in my chart, which is where we see not only romantic partnership and really close friends, but also healers, guides, teachers to us. And Uranus can remove, it can cut and bring endings, especially if it's hitting, an angular house, a personal planet, a luminary. So that's not going to happen for everybody. But my example is a good one of the sometimes sudden, unexpected shifts that can seem like tragic losses. It was to me, but it sets us in a new direction of self-trust, self-respect, and self-reliance sometimes. Sometimes the best spiritual guidance is a sudden recognition that we can, in fact, handle ourselves and our lives on our own, at least for a bit. We do need each other, of course. But it highlights that what we might have thought was impossible is actually possible. So this is a time to really keep an eye out for signs, synchronicities, and omens where your guidance system from the other side, it might be, I know a cousin of mine that died a few years ago to me comes as a hummingbird. You might have images or photographs or actual, like me, several real hummingbirds flying into your house because I need screens on my doors. But interestingly, it lets me take it out on this extended pole that I have for cleaning my ceiling fans. It's kind of amazing. Anyway, tell me what your synchronistic experiences are during eclipses, because they are really loud for me right now. And there's a lot of sudden change happening in the house where Uranus is not only in my natal chart, but what it's opposing. So don't only look at the Pisces Virgo axis of your natal chart right now, look at where Uranus is and the axis that it's on, what it's opposing. That's likely to bring in sudden dynamic change into your life as well. So I say all this because you might be seeing letters or special numbers or hearing a certain song or seeing kind of animals. Or maybe you have a conversation with a stranger that is somehow a real gift to you and provides an opening to feeling safe in the world in a different way. And eclipse energy can come up in lots of different forms. And that's what I'm so excited about because I work obviously in the field of deep healing and transformation, often with people who have survived unthinkable experiences. And this eclipse is forming a trine to Ceres, the Great Mother, the ruler of agriculture and the seasons, and a symbol of the underworld journey and grieving process that really we must all take in an impermanent world where loss and change and death, and really the experience of interacting with dark forces is just unavoidable in a physical incarnation. But a trine, where Ceres is trining the eclipse and conjunct Mars, it's by 5 degrees. It's a little bit wide, but it's not super wide. These are both together in Cancer, the sign of the mother. That supports our capacity to cut ties with some of the old karma where our mother's grief might have been projected onto us, where we've carried stories of loss that weren't even ours, that led to fears. Conjunct Mars, Ceres, trining the eclipse in Pisces, where these 2 planets in Cancer, it's so much about release from the past and the courage to be fully present with the mother archetype in each of us from its highest vantage point, which is the capacity for emotional attunement and tolerating grief. Pisces is fantastic at emotionally attuning, but it can overdo it to the point of taking on and almost being like a sponge, a wet sponge, not a dry sponge, in a way that doesn't serve them or even anyone else. But trine energy between the eclipse and Ceres and Mars in Cancer, where Mars is not happy, is a capacity here to feel deeply without being completely emotionally overwhelmed, and to release, sever, cut the fear that everything in our body, if we were to experience it around grief and loss, would be so overwhelming we couldn't survive it, because indeed we can. And this archetype can lead us on the other side of that to embrace a new sense of who we are that is less bogged down by the limitations of an emotional past we haven't processed. So if a partial lunar eclipse squaring Uranus, trining Ceres and Mars while the sun is conjunct Mercury at a Cazimi is not enough to inspire sudden change and fate unfolding in those areas of our lives, consider that just a couple days before Mercury's union with the sun, as it's getting closer and closer to the sun from Leo into Virgo, it opposes the North Node on Tuesday the 25th at 29 degrees of Aquarius, the anaretic degree, which is where the nodes start at the end because they move backwards, before it moves into Virgo on its way to the Cazimi with the sun, and trines a Chiron and Taurus at 0 degrees 39 minutes as its next move. So this is a healing fated friction relationally because that's what oppositions are. Oppositions are the nature of Saturn, 180 degree angles, remember. So there's a coming of age at the end of this eclipse cycle that provides a much deeper sense of security. Chiron retrograde trining that's Mercury brand new in Virgo is a Mercury that doesn't quite understand yet the consequences of all this change of mind and heart unfolding. Because when Mercury is combust, meaning it's within 8 degrees of the sun, or even if it's just under the beams, which is 15 degrees on either side of the sun, we can often feel like we're in a Mercury retrograde, which we just exited. So for those of you, by the way, who feel like Mercury retrograde never ended, maybe you're Mercury ruled, maybe you have like a Gemini or Virgo sun, moon, or rising, or maybe you're in a Mercury ruled perfection year. If Mercury retrograde doesn't seem like it's ended for you yet, you are not alone. It will feel better as we get further distance between Mercury and the sun into September, and Mercury moves beyond the sun. But in this moment, fated, destined change, especially related to solar figures, we'll see that bring up our own inner stuff and our inner issues around our own identities, where we can see a release internally, not just out in the external world. But people also have been saying that for a long time and haven't quite seen it yet. So I don't know. I'm more concerned with what sudden changes are unfolding in us and what version of ourselves are we really ready to let go. Maybe that's letting go of the title we've always held in our job. Maybe it's a literal change of name because we're getting divorced or married. Maybe it involves spiritual messages in the form of images that we don't quite yet understand during that combustion. Or we could be receiving channeled messages because Mercury is still in the fire sign of Leo in the anaretic degree at the very end, opposing that North Node before it does its Cazimi. There's the physical impulse to move, to make change, to shine brightly, to be seen. So there's still that fire impulse to make sudden change or behavior or action or a decision at this time that we might not even be able to understand, but we'll know deep down that it's more aligned with the healing trajectory of our life, is going to have a more healing outcome, rather either right now or down the line. And remember, we're in the eclipse portal or window of time, and eclipses unfold over time, as you know. So we're likely to make a change or feel differently in our own skin relatively soon, but what new life looks like is probably going to take that 6, 12, 18 months to unfold. Some of the Leo energies that are at play, again, Leo's a fixed sign. They don't love change. But in Virgo, as we enter Virgo season with the sun in Virgo trining Chiron, we've got a lot more flexibility and mutability that we can carry with us through whatever fated and destined change is arising within us or around us within this next, 6 to 18 month time period following the Pisces eclipse next week. We've got one more in Virgo for that axis to fully be complete, and then another 9 years, of course, before we'll have nodes in those signs again. I think that Virgo eclipse is next February at the end. So keep a really sharp eye on that Virgo Pisces arc of your chart, because there's a new identity that we're reclaiming that will begin to take form and shape in that time frame, because it's complete now, and ideally lead us into the kind of life that's available when we have miraculous spiritual grace in our lives, and that is a sense of peace and enoughness, spiritual support and divine purpose. Pisces eclipses promise that for each one of us. So your meditation for this partial lunar eclipse, Mercury Cazimi moment is, what would it take to open to spiritually releasing an old identity that is not mine anymore? Your mirror work for the transit is, straight spine, deep breath, look into your own left eye. You have the courage to release the past and become steeped in divine contentment. And your mantra for the transit is, I allow the universe to show me the changes that are needed now. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for subscribing, for hitting that subscribe. It is free, for hitting the like button, for hyping the video. I love reading your comments. Thank you so much. Truly, my booking links are below. If you like this video, you'll like these two above me. And until next time, bye for now.